Why did I stay up that night, wrapping gifts with trembling hands? Why did I believe the glittering promise of Christmas magic could mend the growing cracks in my marriage? Why did I ignore the warnings etched in his distant glances, his late nights at the office, and the subtle yet undeniable pull of his attention away from me? And most damning of all, why did I think he would never betray me? The snow outside fell in lazy, hypnotic swirls, blanketing our suburban street in a false sense of peace. Our tree stood proudly in the corner, its lights twinkling with cruel irony. I remember the exact moment my world began to unravel, the soft vibration of his phone left carelessly on the coffee table, the glow of a message I wasn't supposed to see. It wasn't curiosity that made me pick up the phone, it was instinct. Or maybe it was the weight of suspicion finally breaking through my denial. The screen revealed her name, a name I didn't recognize, paired with a heart emoji. The message read, "Can't stop thinking about tonight. Wish I could sneak away now." My fingers froze, hovering over the phone as my chest tightened. My mind screamed for explanations, but the truth was already there, staring back at me in glowing letters. He wasn't at work that night, like he said he would be. He was with her. In that moment, the magic of Christmas shattered. I looked at the gifts I had so lovingly chosen and wrapped for him, for us, for the life I thought we were building together. How many Christmases had we shared? How many times had we promised each other forever under mistletoe kisses and midnight toasts? How could he throw it all away for someone else? When he finally walked through the door that night, his cheeks red from the cold and a faint trace of perfume that wasn't mine lingering in the air, I knew. I knew everything. But I didn't confront him, not yet. I needed to understand how he could look me in the eye after what he had done. I needed to see if there was any trace of remorse in him, any flicker of guilt. Instead, he kissed my cheek, murmured a distracted, "Merry Christmas," and disappeared into the shower. I sat there in the living room, the warmth of the fireplace doing nothing to thaw the icy rage that was beginning to bloom in my chest. This was the moment that changed everything. This was the beginning of the end. The silence in the house was suffocating, wrapping around me tighter than the blanket I had pulled over my legs. I stayed on the couch long after he went to bed, unable to face the man who had just desecrated the sanctity of our marriage, and on Christmas Eve, no less. How could he lie to me so easily? Every laugh we shared, every loving word he whispered in my ear, felt like a dagger twisting deeper into my chest. Did he think I wouldn't find out? Or did he think I'd forgive him when I did? The hours dragged on. My mind replayed every moment from the past few months, trying to piece together the puzzle of his betrayal. The late nights. The extra business trips. The way he had stopped looking at me like I was the only woman in the world. The phone still sat on the coffee table. It was unlocked when I first saw the message, and now I stared at it like it was a coiled viper. My hands trembled as I picked it up again, my breath shallow and shaky. I didn't want to look, but I had to. I needed to know who this woman was, what she had that I didn't. Her name was Melissa. She was younger, prettier, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and turn heads without trying. The kind of woman I used to be before life with him wore me down into something quieter, more ordinary. Her messages painted a picture I didn't want to see, a whirlwind of secret rendezvous, shared hotel rooms, and whispered promises. I scrolled further. My stomach churned as I read one of her recent messages. "Do you think she knows? I don't want to hurt anyone, but I can't keep this a secret forever. I want you to spend Christmas with me, not her." I felt sick. My hands were ice, the phone slipping from my grasp and landing on the floor with a dull thud. This wasn't just a fling. She wasn't just a one-time mistake. She wanted him. And worse, he wanted her. When I finally forced myself to bed, the weight of the truth pressing down on me, he was already asleep. His breathing was soft, even, completely unbothered by the chaos he had set into motion. I stared at him in the dim light of our bedroom, trying to reconcile the man I had loved for a decade with the stranger who had been hiding his second life. I wanted to shake him awake, to scream at him, to demand answers to the million questions raging inside me. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I lay down beside him, the sheets between us suddenly feeling like a chasm. Sleep didn't come that night. My mind refused to rest, and my heart refused to stop breaking. The next morning, Christmas morning, he woke up with a smile that I hated more than anything. He stretched, kissed my forehead, and muttered, "Merry Christmas, babe." I stared at him, feeling my stomach twist at the sight of his shameless ease. How dare he act like nothing was wrong? How dare he smile when he'd just torn our lives apart? "Merry Christmas," I said, the words bitter on my tongue. I wanted to confront him right then and there, to throw his phone at him and demand he explain why Melissa's perfume was on his skin and her heart was in his pocket. But I didn't. Not yet. Because today wasn't just about him and me. It was about our family. Our parents were coming over, nieces and nephews, the whole sprawling, happy crowd. I wasn't about to let him ruin Christmas for everyone else, too. But as I set the table, poured mimosas, and unwrapped gifts with a smile plastered on my face, I was already planning my next move. He didn't deserve this charade. He didn't deserve me. The house buzzed with holiday cheer as family poured in, their arms laden with gifts and their laughter filling every corner. It should have been a perfect Christmas. But beneath the warmth and the twinkling lights, I was unraveling. I moved through the motions like a ghost. Every laugh felt forced, every smile hollow. My eyes kept darting to him, how he charmed our nieces with jokes, refilled our parents' glasses without being asked, and slid easily into his role as the devoted husband and gracious host. If I hadn't seen the messages with my own eyes, I might have believed the act myself. But now I saw the cracks. The way he avoided meeting my gaze for too long. The faint stiffness in his laugh when I brushed his arm. The way his phone never left his pocket, even though he used to leave it on the kitchen counter without a second thought. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't crazy. Something had shifted between us, and everyone else in the room was too wrapped up in the holiday spirit to notice. After dinner, while the kids played with their new toys and the adults lounged in the living room, he retreated to the kitchen. I followed a few minutes later, finding him leaning against the counter, his phone in hand. "Who are you texting?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He startled slightly, locking the screen and sliding the phone into his back pocket. "Nobody," he said quickly. "Just checking the weather." For a moment, I considered letting it go. It was Christmas, after all. But the memory of Melissa's messages burned in my mind. I couldn't stop myself. "Do you think I'm stupid?" I asked, stepping closer. My voice was quiet but laced with venom. He frowned, confusion flickering across his face. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that you're lying to me. That you've been lying to me for God knows how long. Don't insult me by pretending you don't know what I mean." His face paled slightly, but he recovered quickly, his defenses snapping into place. "Hannah, I don't know what you're trying to say, but this is neither the time nor the place for whatever you're accusing me of." "No," I agreed, my hands trembling as I clenched them into fists. "It isn't. But that hasn't stopped you from sneaking around, has it? From texting her even while your family is here?" His jaw tightened. "Lower your voice," he hissed. "They'll hear you." "Good." I snapped. "Let them hear. Let them know exactly what kind of man you are." He grabbed my arm, his grip firm but not painful, and pulled me toward the pantry. Once inside, he shut the door behind us, closing us off from the festivities outside. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he demanded, his voice low but furious. "What's wrong with me?" I echoed, my voice trembling with rage. "You cheated on me, Mark. On Christmas Eve. Do you have any idea how pathetic that makes you?" His eyes widened, and for a moment, I saw a flash of guilt before his expression hardened. "Hannah, I don't know what you think you saw." "I saw enough," I cut him off. "I saw her messages. I know about Melissa. So don't you dare stand here and lie to my face." For a moment, the room was silent except for the muffled sound of laughter from the living room. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not what you think," he said, his voice softer now. "I made a mistake. A stupid, one-time mistake." I laughed bitterly. "A mistake? Is that what you're calling it? Because from what I read, it seems like you've been making that same mistake for months." He flinched, but I didn't stop. "How could you do this to me? To us? Do you know what I gave up to build this life with you? And for what? For you to throw it all away for some woman who doesn't care about anything but her own ego. Hannah, stop, he said, his voice breaking slightly. I know I messed up, okay? I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, we can work through this. I'll do whatever it takes. Work through this? I repeated, my voice thick with disbelief. You don't get to decide that. You don't get to waltz back into my life after destroying it and pretend everything can go back to normal. I stepped back, shaking my head. You ruined this, Mark. You ruined us. And now you're going to face the consequences. I left him in the pantry, stunned and silent, and walked back into the living room. My heart pounded in my chest, my hands trembling so badly that I had to press them against my thighs to steady myself. The room was a blur of laughter and warmth, the kind of Christmas I had always dreamed of, and the kind of Christmas he had destroyed. Mark followed a few minutes later, his face pale and strained. He shot me a warning look, silently begging me to keep my mouth shut. But I was done pretending. I wasn't going to let him sit there, basking in the glow of family love, while I suffocated under the weight of his betrayal. I waited until everyone was seated, their plates piled high with dessert. Then I stood, my glass of wine in hand, and tapped a fork against it to get their attention. The room quieted and all eyes turned to me. I'd like to say a few words, I began, my voice calm despite the storm raging inside me. Christmas is about family, about love, and about being honest with the people you care about. Mark's face blanched. Hannah, he said softly, a warning laced in his tone. I ignored him. And in the spirit of honesty, I continued, there's something I need to share with all of you. Hannah, stop, he said again, this time louder. His voice wavered, and I could see the panic in his eyes. But it was too late for him. Too late for us. I turned to face the room, my gaze locking on each person. Mark has been having an affair, I said, the words falling from my lips like stones. For months. He lied to me, to all of us, and ruined everything we've built. The room erupted into chaos. Gasps, murmurs, and the clatter of forks hitting plates filled the air. My mother-in-law clapped a hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. My father-in-law leaned forward, his brow furrowed in confusion. My sister looked at me, her expression a mix of disbelief and fury. Mark stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Hannah, this isn't the time or place, he said, his voice trembling. No, Mark, I shot back. The time and place was when you decided to cheat on me. The time and place was when you chose her over your family. Is this true? His mother asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark hesitated, his jaw tightening. For a moment, I thought he might deny it, but then his shoulders sagged, and he nodded. Yes, he said quietly. It's true. The room fell into stunned silence. My father-in-law stood, his face red with anger. How could you? He demanded. To Hannah? To your family? Mark ran a hand through his hair, his expression a mix of shame and frustration. I made a mistake, he said. I'm sorry, okay? I don't know what else to say. A mistake? I repeated, my voice rising. A mistake is forgetting to take out the trash. A mistake is burning the Christmas ham. What you did wasn't a mistake, Mark. It was a choice. A selfish, disgusting choice. Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wasn't going to cry in front of him. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing how deeply he had broken me. I think it's time for you to leave, I said, my voice trembling but firm. He stared at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. Hannah, please. Leave, I repeated, pointing toward the door. You don't deserve to be here. Not with me. Not with them. For a moment, he didn't move. Then, with a resigned sigh, he nodded and walked to the door. The room was silent as he grabbed his coat and stepped outside into the falling snow. When the door clicked shut behind him, I collapsed into a chair, the weight of the confrontation finally catching up to me. Tears spilled down my cheeks, and my sister rushed to my side, wrapping her arms around me. The magic of Christmas was gone, shattered beyond repair. But as I sat there, surrounded by the people who still loved me, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild something new from the wreckage. The hours after Mark's departure were a blur. Family members moved in and out of the kitchen, their voices hushed as they exchanged glances, unsure of what to say. I sat at the dining table, staring at the crumbs of dessert left on my plate. My sister, Leah, stayed by my side, her hand resting on mine like an anchor. "I didn't mean to ruin Christmas," I murmured, my voice hoarse from the confrontation. "You didn't ruin anything," Leah said firmly. "He did. And you had every right to say what you did." I nodded numbly, but guilt still gnawed at me. The laughter, the warmth, all of it had evaporated the moment I exposed Mark's betrayal. The children were upstairs playing, blissfully unaware of the drama, but the adults were left grappling with the shattered remnants of the day. As the evening wore on, people began to leave. My parents were the last to go, lingering by the door with worried expressions. "Are you sure you'll be okay tonight?" my mother asked for the third time. "I'll be fine," I assured her, though I wasn't sure if I believed it myself. "I need some time to process." She hesitated, then pulled me into a tight hug. "You don't have to go through this alone," she whispered. "We're here for you, Hannah. Always." After they left, the house fell into an eerie silence. The Christmas tree still twinkled in the corner, its cheerful glow now mocking me. The presents remained unopened, a painful reminder of the day that could have been. I wandered upstairs, my footsteps heavy. Our bedroom felt foreign without him. His cologne lingered in the air, and his clothes were still draped over the chair by the window. For a moment, I considered sleeping in the guest room, but something inside me snapped. This was my home. I wouldn't let him take that from me. I stripped the bed of its sheets, throwing them into a pile on the floor. I opened the window, letting the icy night air flood the room. It was bitterly cold, but it helped me breathe. As I stood there, staring out at the snow-covered street, I realized that I didn't feel broken anymore. I felt angry, and that anger gave me strength. The days that followed were a whirlwind of practicalities. Mark called repeatedly, leaving voicemails and sending texts begging for a chance to talk. I ignored everyone. When he showed up at the house, I refused to open the door. Instead, I focused on myself. I met with a lawyer who was blunt but kind. She assured me that I had every right to demand the house, the savings, and a clean break from him. I clung to her words like a lifeline. My family rallied around me in ways I hadn't expected. Leah came over every day, bringing coffee and groceries. My father helped me change the locks, and my mother insisted on redecorating the bedroom. "A fresh start," she said with a smile as she handed me swatches of fabric for new curtains. Slowly, the house began to feel like mine again. One afternoon, as I was boxing up Mark's belongings, I found a card tucked into the back of the closet. It was from our first Christmas together as husband and wife. His handwriting, once so familiar, now felt like a relic from another life. To my beautiful Hannah, it read, "You make every day feel like Christmas morning. I love you forever." Tears pricked my eyes, but they didn't fall. That promise had been a lie, and I wouldn't waste another tear on it. I placed the card in the box with the rest of his things and sealed it shut. By New Year's Eve, I felt like a different person. The pain of betrayal was still there, but it no longer consumed me. Instead, I felt a strange sense of hope. Mark's betrayal had broken me, but it had also freed me. For the first time in years, I wasn't tied to someone who took me for granted. That night, I sat by the fire with Leah, sipping champagne as we watched the countdown on TV. When the clock struck midnight, she raised her glass. "To new beginnings," she said, her eyes sparkling with determination. "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. And as the fireworks lit up the night sky, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, I was excited to find out. I was no longer the woman defined by her husband's betrayal. I was Hannah, strong, determined, and ready to take back my life.